Hello, we are at an undisclosed location in the Scottish countryside. It's a bank holiday in England, Northern Ireland, and Wales, but not in Scotland. But we decided, you know what? It's a sunny day today. There's rain forecast for the rest of the week. So let's just get out. Let's go and see if we can do a wee bit of Tesla camping. Now, we don't actually intend on sleeping in the car tonight, and there's a couple of reasons for that. So, if this is your first time watching the channel, I'm Ryan. My wife Rebecca is here. We did a road trip last year around Europe where we Tesla camped in our Tesla for our honeymoon. It was absolutely fantastic. But there's another member of the Greens, which you may or may not know about. So he has thrown a little bit of a spanner in the works for us when it comes to camping in our Tesla. There's a lot of new things that we need to consider. That's really why we're here today, is to test out some things and just see what's working and what isn't, what we need to improve upon. And the best way to do that is just to get out and just try it out. So let me introduce you to him if you haven't already seen him. This is the boy in question. This is Alfie, or a Cocker Spaniel. And unfortunately for him, he's already been bitten by a couple of ticks. We are not in the best of ground. So you can see here, it's just long grass everywhere. We're out in the wild, so it's to be expected. We're not at a managed campsite, so we can't really complain. We're in nature. It is what it is. But yeah, he's already got some ticks. We've had to buy some carabiners from Screwfix for his lead. So we've got a carabiner on his long lead there, and then he's got a carabiner on the other end of the lead, which was attached to him. I think it still is. So it's attached to his harness there. So that's fine. That means that he can be off lead and he can be roaming about. Obviously there's a road there, single track road, but we've worked out the length of the lead. He can't actually get onto the road, so that's great. But the problem is that he keeps getting the lead tangled up in his legs. And the other thing is as well, is that if you are, say, cooking, which we're trying to do just now, I'll get onto that in a minute, you know, you've got your table set up, and if he's walking about with this lead trailing him, and you're say you've got boiling water or what have you, that's just an accident waiting to happen. So for anybody who has actually camped in general or Tesla camped with their dog, if you've got any tips about the whole lead situation, staking them down, keeping them away from things that could get knocked over. Would really love to hear your comments and your advice on that, because this is the first time we've ever done this, and we're just kind of like figuring it out just now, that it's all these silly things that you don't think about when you're at home, and now you actually realize, wait a minute, this is actually a big issue. So what do we do about this? He's fairly well trained, but we wouldn't necessarily trust him 100% to have him off lead. Uh, so he's going to have to be tethered to some degree, even at campsites. So we really need to figure out, how we can make this work. The other issue that we've ran into is the power situation. So we've brought along our Jackery 500 watt Jackery Explorer 500 that's called. So it's a 500 watt power station. It's got one socket here, so we're using that to power our trusty Van Gogh double hob. They don't actually sell this anymore, but in the description you'll be able to get our full gear list, and I've got another double hob that we recommend that's similar to this that you could get. The issue is, as you can see, we're trying to boil some pasta. We've got some amazing bolognese. We can't eat it just now because we cannot get this pasta boiled, and the reason for that is we're limited. It's got different settings here, so it goes 1 up to 5. We can only have it at 3, and this is currently stuck at 2. The reason for that is, as you see here, as the induction hob pulls electricity, it maxes out at around about 433, I think, was for, yeah. around about 433 watts. And if we push it any higher than that, this whole thing just shuts down. So what we're really discovering is that because we don't have access to electric hookup and we're trying to actually boil something, we're not just like frying it off or what have you. We really need like a gas burner. That is going to massively help us, because we would like to do some sort of like wild camping, you know, because you're able to do that here in Scotland. You're legally allowed to do that, even though technically this isn't classed as wild camping, because wild camping is supposedly you go away from the roads and you take a tent and you don't go by motorized vehicle and all that sort of stuff. But essentially do what people do in like motorhomes and what have you, you know, pull up in like a lay-by here like we are, and be able to just stay for the night or stay for 2 nights or what have you, and be self-sufficient. But if that means that it takes 3 hours for your pasta to boil, then that's not a great situation to be in. We're gonna have to get a gas burner. So I think that's something that we're definitely gonna have to look into. But other than that, it's beautiful here. There's just a couple of kinks that we have to work out. But like I said, you've just got to get out there. You've got to try it, go out in the wild and see what works and what doesn't. It's all great on paper, but in practice, that's when you really see all of the big issues that you need to solve. I just see Alfie's getting on. I think the flies are bothering him, and the ticks. So yeah, we've got our chairs set up as well. I don't really know how long we're going to be staying here for, because don't know if our food is actually going to cook at all. Like I said, it's just not boiling. We found this place on an app called Park4 Night, where you can find different places that people recommend, little laybys and stuff like that, and places that motorhomes can park at. So that was how we found this place. But if you guys have any tips as well as to how to find good spots, you know, that aren't necessarily campsites, but they're places where you can just stop for the night or two, that would be awesome to hear your feedback on that. But yeah, look at the view here. It is absolutely beautiful. It's such a nice spot. It's just not ideal for bringing a dog. I would say in terms of ticks, he's going to be riddled with ticks, so we're going to have to get those out of him later on. And our power situation just isn't the best, but yeah, it's all trial and error. So several hours have passed, and I'm not exaggerating. We have finally cooked the pasta and the bolognese. That was an absolute nightmare. This Van Gogh hob is great. The problem is this Jackery. It just can't pull enough power in order to actually boil water quickly and you know, heat up the food that you need heated. So even at home, it does take a while to boil water from scratch, but we just couldn't. We were just limited with the power that we could fold from it. So we're gonna have to look at getting a gas burner, but also I think that this Jackery 500, its days are over. Anyway, we're gonna enjoy this pasta finally, and yeah. Really. So a couple of days have passed now since our trial run Tesla camping with our dog Alfie. And since the passage of time, there's a couple of things that we've kind of figured out. So obviously we had an initial issue with his lead. So we had a really long line, I think it was about 20 meters long, and that was hooked on with the really inexpensive carabiners, which were actually great, super strong, super sturdy. And he was hooked on to one of the passenger doors and obviously hooked on to his harness. And the problem with that was that he could just run around, you know, the edge of the car and outside the car, and it's just a complete trip hazard. You know, if you're walking about, you've got this line running about behind him that you could trip over. If there's anything out there like tables or chairs or anything like that, he doesn't know where that line is. He's just being a dog and sniffing about and living his best life. But he could be getting tangled up in all of that, and it could become a real hazard. And when we actually started thinking about it, this isn't just an issue when we're planning on camping in the car without a tent. Even if we have a tent, we've got all of our guy lines out to the side, and he's just going to be going and weaving in around those guy lines and just getting tangled up. So on the drive back, me and Rebecca were chatting and we were trying to come up with some solutions for this problem. And as always, the wife came up with the solution. So I give all credit to Rebecca. Essentially, we can't have him hooked on to the passenger door, even if we have the tent set up. Because with the guy lines, we're actually restricted with our access to those doors anyway. You have to take the guy line off in order to open the door and then put the guy line back on. It's not a nuisance if you're trying to get something from the car, but we're not necessarily going to do that just to let Alfie run around. As we've learned from previously, the weather can just change like that, and you want to make sure that your tent is secure and safe. So those guy lines must remain firmly in place. So what else could we do? Well, actually got, don't know if you can see here, probably not, that there's another hook here for the boot latch. So when the boot comes down, latches on to this hooked section here. So we can actually carabiner our Alfie to this boot section. What we can also do is we can actually get a shorter lead. So a 20-meter lead is just way too long. We still want to give him freedom. We want to make sure that he's safe and we're all safe. So we're going to have to get a shorter lead, hook him on to the boot here, and we can do that when we're camping without the tent, but also when we're camping with the tent as well, because when the tent is set up, this hook isn't in action. It's essentially just sits there waiting for the boot to be closed. So what we can do is we can hook him on inside the tent. That means that he can roam about in the tent and be safe, even with the tent doors open. And we'll try and get a lead that's long enough that he will be able to go out of the tent, but not too far, so he's going about and getting tangled in the guy lines and getting tangled around tables and chairs and all that sort of stuff. And then if we do want to give him, which we will, give him more freedom outside of the tent, I believe you can get stakes that go into the ground, and that will just have to be what we tether him to. I don't have any experience with those stakes, so if you guys have any experience with camping with a dog, Tesla camping with a dog, and you've used stakes like that, or you have some sort of other solution, we are all open ears. We want to hear your thoughts on that. So please jump in the comments and let us know what can we do to make sure that Alfie has a great time when he comes on trips with us. And then the other issue that we had clearly was a lack of power. So if we're trying to wild camp around Scotland, or if we're trying to wild camp or stealth camp anywhere and we need to cook food, the problem is power. That pasta literally took hours to cook. We had a 500-watt Jackery power station and we literally used over half of its capacity boiling that pasta. And I say boiling because I never even saw it actually boil. I think it was just soaked for so long in the water and it was a little bit warm that it was somewhat edible. It wasn't the best pasta in the world because of that, but it was better than nothing. So we ended up using half of the capacity of that 500-watt battery Jackery power station. And as I showed previously, we were limited as to how much power we could pull on our Van Gogh induction hob. That Van Gogh induction hob is great. We've used it before. We've used it on our road trip around Europe. When you've got access to electric hookup and you can use the full power of that Van Gogh induction hob, it is amazing. We can cook our food super quick. We could boil stuff super quick. With that 500-watt Jackery Explorer power station, we were really limited. Our hands were tied. And in all honesty, a simple, cheap gas burner would have done the job. Even if we just had one burner to boil the pasta and then just use the Jackery with the induction stove to heat up the bolognese, that would have solved our problem. But I think going forward, what we really need to do is say goodbye to the Jackery 500-watt Explorer. It's just not powerful enough. We're going to have to look at getting at least a 1 kilowatt power station. So I'm kind of welcoming this change anyway. The Jackery Explorer has been an okay piece of kit, but it's not something that I would really recommend you buy. I think there's other power stations out there that are actually much better designed. Jackery's done really well with their branding. It really stands out as a product. They have a name for themselves, but the actual design of just that 500-watt power station was a bit of a letdown. Just simple things like the positioning of the socket for the plug. You're technically meant to not move that Jackery. It's not meant to lie on its back. It's meant to sit upright because it has these fans. It's meant to allow airflow when it heats up. But the problem with that is when you go to plug in any sort of socket, any sort of plug into the socket, you essentially can't because the socket is so low to the ground. So you have to tip it on its side. So just simple things like that. You're also limited with how much amps it can pull. Originally, when I went to test out our 12-volt pump to basically pump up our tent, I tried using it on the 12-volt outlet on the Jackery and it just spluttered. It couldn't even power up the pump. As soon as I took the pump and plugged it into the 12-volt outlet in a Tesla, boom, it just worked like that. So really, this expensive power station that we've bought, it's just a glorified power bank. It's not strong enough to actually power the things that we actually need to use. So that would be my advice, is if you're looking to cook or pull a lot of power from any devices and you're going camping, you necessarily won't always get access to electric hookup, so you have to keep that in mind. I would definitely recommend looking at least a 1 kilowatt power station, if not higher. I think the 500-watt power stations are not really usable if you're looking to power any devices that require a lot of power. I think they're okay for charging tablets and laptops and things like that. But again, you can do that with a smaller battery bank. So I'm glad that we actually did go and do that trial run with Alfie. It allowed us to actually see in practice, where our blind spots have been, things that we've overlooked. And it's always something that we can overcome. So with a bit of planning, getting the right kit, and going and doing more practice runs, we're going to be able to get this dialed down so we can actually take Alfie on trips with us as well. So thanks so much for watching. See you guys on the next one.